It's Wednesday, November the 3rd, here at the Tirconaill Tribune with John McAteer, Eamon McFadden and Declan Kerr, taking a look back at the week in words and in photographs. And it's the first week of the winter time, and it feels like the first week of winter as well, indeed. But nevertheless, we have got the paper out and about just on time, despite a breakdown in the phone connections, the broadband connections all afternoon since around 2 o'clock, and we don't know why that is, but we've managed to overcome that. So, and it's good that we have, because our environmental correspondent James Woods has been reporting from Glasgow, where he seems to have an issue about capitalist-led technology rather than people-led technology, and this is a precious piece. He's talking here about armoured plated cars, helicopters and planes of all sizes pumping out CO2 over Glasgow. And then there's dozens of chefs who are plating up Highland haggis Scottish sirloin steaks from cows that do not emit any CO2. Fish to suit all palates, plundered mainly from Irish waters by trawlers whose owners live in salubrious surroundings in landlocked countries. This is quite interesting stuff. So he's probably not really congratulatory, or probably not very optimistic about the future. He's talking about, of course, our Taoiseach, Michael Martin, never escapes James Woods' gaze, and how he has increased the envelope of 93 million by the year 2025, up to 225 million for the climate fund. So that at least is some movement forward, not an awful lot. Then he's going on about the capitalists all being hell-bent on the notion of unconstrained economic growth coupled with ongoing technological advances in wind energy and all this sort of stuff. And he's just wondering, will this make life cheaper for everybody, for all of us? But does it make your electricity bill cheaper, Ash? Of course not. Electricity has increased fivefold because wind farms and solar panel technology are investor-led instead of being public-led, which decrees that those profits are to be the be-all and end-all of such developments. Then he turns to our beloved Minister for Agriculture, and he refers to him about Fianna Fáil's Charlie McConalogue tasked with telling us that cows farting CO2 is going to be reduced, but the number of cows are not. How serious is that? And not only for the cows. That there is well worth reading. Mind you, I haven't read it very, very closely. But
the word stabilisation's come into the...
Stabilisation
is a big word now.
Yeah, it's a big word, and it replaces the simple term cuts. There's no doubt that the
stabilisation.
I mean, if you're going to stabilise the national herd, farmers must be sweating in case that their herd is now unstable.
Yeah. Well, Michael Healy-Rae wasn't impressed in her with the word stabilisation. I watched it in the Dáil there, was it yesterday?
It was on the Week in Politics as well.
Yeah.
Michael Healy-Rae was tearing into Charlie, who wasn't. He's long enough in politics now. He is on message to deliver the government's and indeed the messaging that is coming out from the civil servants, and you might call it very boring and very long-winded, and it is. But at the end of the day, does it really mean all that much? Because we don't know. When we looked at the Farmers' Journal last week and saw the KPMG analysis done independently, which is quite frightening if you read it, like at most you could lose about 56,000 jobs and 4 billion a year. At the lower end of the scale, you'd get away with a loss of about $1 billion and the loss of 10, 12, 15,000 jobs or what. It's somewhere in that area, I think, that lower area, that we're going to be hit first. Because the reality is, if you're going to stabilise the herd, you're going to reduce numbers, and that is it, full stop. But we'll be coming around to that over and over again, because we're going to turn as well to the increasing numbers of COVID-19. And Michael Martin, 24 hours ago, did not rule out the possibility of further restrictions until Leo Varadkar put his own piece onto today, said there would be no more restrictions, that we were capable of handling this. But given that you have 3,174 this Wednesday in hospital, you have about 460 in hospital and under 100, I think it's 86 in ICU. Something like that. The numbers are worrying, but not totally alarming in that
high number of infections.
Given back in January, the high number of infections were matched with with a huge number of people in hospital and ICU.
Yeah.
The system came very close to being swamped.
Oh, wow.
It's not at this point.
And
Now,
yeah, and the Minister for Health was on last night. I've seen him with Mary Mulcallahan, and he was grilled in relation to that as well, and he was sticking very steadfastly to that, you know, basically that they weren't for changing in terms of their plan, in terms of going back at this point in time anyway.
but how convincing is Stephen Donnelly? You know, really, how convincing is he? You do believe that he's just on message, and regardless of what the circumstances, he's going to remain on message. There are big concerns around the country about the increasing numbers, and the fact now that it's almost 20 months since the outbreak of COVID first showed on these shores. I mean, what's Christmas going to be like? Business sentiment is very, very low right across all models.
Yeah.
People are not spending big time. You just look out across the main street in Mulford here all afternoon, and with us being out of touch with broadband being down, we haven't hardly had a vehicle pass down that main street all afternoon. Turning to a much more pleasant note, Noah Gooch's big fundraising campaign organised through his dad and the gang up at Highland Radio and their friends has raised €237,112, and that's being distributed to 9 beneficiaries, which is really, really big news. And congratulations to everybody involved in that, because that's a phenomenal amount of money.
A magnificent effort, and you know, great work by all involved there, and to pull it all together and to get that kind of money out of it. And listen, 9 charities are going to benefit hugely from this. You know, a really great fundraiser.
It really captured the imagination, didn't it? Like the way everybody, when it was on, it was the talk of the town, like talk of the country. Nearly, it was.
Yeah. It probably was the talk of the country. That, you know, it was very, very high profile, and it got all the national airplays. They got on radio. I think did they get on television? I think they actually
did. Surely, and they got plenty of local coverages that went through every area as well.
But it was a great story, it was a great cause, and Noah was the inspiration behind that, you know.
Yeah.
So let's wish him well in the future. Absolutely. And his family.
Yeah, very much so.
From that, we're going to go to one of the main stories of today, and that is the Donegal villagers, 8 of them, who are pumping raw sewage into the estuaries, into the atmosphere, and God knows where else. You're looking at that one.
Yeah. It's worrying, but it's something that we're not surprised at either, John. Really, are we? You know, because
absolutely not.
I suppose it's just there now in black and white from the Environmental Protection Agency, and raw sewage leaking in from the towns in Ramelton and Rathmullen and Coolitee, Falcarra, Kerrykeel, Kilcar, Bortonport, and really, it's for those areas. It's not a very nice situation.
The one that I'm surprised is not on that list is this town in Mulford here, because there's been complaints since the good weather back last May and June about the stench coming off the sewage system out behind the public service office, or rather the county council offices down at the bottom of the town. And I would have presumed that Mulford would have been pretty high up on that agenda, but it's not there at all. But help is at hand, because it is envisaged that treatment works will be provided by 2025, is it?
2025, 2023 maybe for a couple of them there. But
is Mulford, or is Ramelton, Rathmullen?
They're 2025, and then you have Kerrykeel coming in 2023.
We're going to have low with this stench for another 4 years.
Yeah, that's...
Again, we're waiting for a decision from on board Planala. They have already, the council has already approved it. It has been referred to on board Planala by a group of objectors, the Brown Action Group. There's probably a decision due on that before Christmas time, I would imagine. Now that's already a way behind schedule by maybe up to 18 months, close to 2 years. I think it was this time 2 years ago it was initially scheduled to begin.
Yes.
But it's been a very, very slow burning process to do anything about that system. There's going to be disputes about whether a 3-town sewage system is required, or whether each town would be better off with their own standalone plant. Yeah. So that one is open to question. The engineers involved in it in Irish Water have probably taken what they regard as the best technical option, But whatever option is done, it should is finally given the go-ahead, given the green light. It's quite evident that those 3 towns need very, very urgent updating of their sewage systems because they're absolutely filthy. The one that I noted there was that Moville is not going to get sewage treatment until 2027.
Right.
If you noticed that in that story.
Yeah,
there.
yeah. And they've been a long time campaign over there, and that in relation to that. So it's.
You know, we're talking about trying to save the planet, and here we are, with towns and villages spewing raw sewage out into the atmosphere, out into our beautiful coastline.
People think it's pristine, you know, when they come here, and then they realise that's the reality of it.
I think at times when you
think the rise in bathing and all that is taken on in lockdown. It's
probably if you dive into the linen there at the quay there, you're likely to come up a dark brown colour.
Paints quite a picture, that, doesn't it?
It's much the same in Rathmullen and everywhere else.
Big beach town like that.
You can
Shocking,
actually
really.
you can actually view it at first hand, the raw sewage going underneath the bridge at Tirconaill heading for the Mulroy, beside a very big holiday site. But that one is now going to be there's going to be a job of work done there over the next couple of years, because Tirconaill is a very busy spot in the middle of summer.
Yeah.
But I mean, we're light years behind. I mean, the EPA are saying that we're probably 20 years behind in dealing with it, and that's just very typical of a good old Ireland and the politics that we play. So, Eamon, you've been looking. You haven't been to the barber.
No, I have. I'm due a trip.
From a quick look, you haven't been to the barber in months, by the looks of it.
That would be it now. I have been under instructions from someone at home to get.
I went to the barber yesterday afternoon here in town, and had a
good experience.
Big long chat about football, Man United and Liverpool and all that kind of thing. Nice experience, yeah. Lovely barber shop.
Well, I'll find out now at the weekend.
Anyway, barber shop.
I might go to this one actually. It's down in good. Down now. This is another piece by James Woods, who you were chatting about earlier, entitled "Shopper and Barber," and a copy of the proclamation.
He probably had filed this before he went to Glasgow.
This was probably for the cop whatever, which is everyone's ranging from cop on to cop off to you, everything in between, but. And then von der Leyen showed up in it in a private jet, and then they realised when they counted that back that she used the private jet to travel a distance of 31 miles at one of these tours. 31 miles.
And Greta Thunberg didn't even get invited, which was rather stupid, because she has made 1 million miles of newsprint by not getting invited, because she's addressing every meeting outside the conference centre.
The most effective person of the whole thing is the person not invited to it, probably. Reaching a wider audience.
How credible is she?
She's credible. I think in the terms of I think the fact that she's just so I would say dogged in what she does. You know, she's young. She's in some ways you know, she has this kind of like a kind of a forceful and almost naivety to what she does. But she seems to be
kind of is she a very special person chosen by the powers that be up above in the skies to come amongst us to warn us? Because obviously she has no more knowledge about it than in real terms than the rest would have.
Oh well, that's it. I mean, she's a very young person, but she obviously it's the I suppose it's the profile. There's nobody raising the environmental impact profile more than she probably is among
it's
young
hard
people.
To understand that, you know, because
it's a different generation.
Yeah,
it's a different generational thing, and it's a social media generation and all of that. So,
but is there something very special about her and what she says?
I think it's just sort of the nature of the way she's like. I don't know how she's gotten into that position where she's able to railroad the like a Donald Trump and all of these different ones. I know she comes from a very privileged background where she's from in Sweden. I think the family are very, very well off in that.
But even though her presence was outside the building, it didn't stop Joe Biden from falling asleep yesterday. But anyway, we'll get back to this barbershop and to the shop floor and the barbershop.
This is the one. So this is it's James here. This is it's a good story. It's well worth checking out because it's typical the way James can write and find these stories. It's a fella called Ian McGillivray, who's the local barber in Falcara for the last 5 years. But he's a great story because he's originally from England, and he has been a barber in this area initially starting back in the year 2000 down in Gardahark, and he's him and his wife and his family have made their home, and it's just a great look. He's from Colchester originally, but there's great yarns about how he's kind of travelled the world before he settled down to come here, and then he found himself. I think he was even a chef at one point, but he ended up opening this barber's business back in the year 2000. 15 years he spent in Gardahark until he moved up, and now he's up near where the old bank is in Falcarra. But there's it's a good story. But
just in the middle of town, really.
That's it. There's one very funny passage here that's worth going into. But the day that when he was down in Gardahark, he used to get a good passing trade there from Gardahark, Gweedore, all that heading out the road.
Oh yeah.
One of the ones his customers who walked in for his from was the one and only Jerry Adams. I don't know if it was Jerry pre all the really long hair.
Was he the grizzly bear character that he now is?
Grizzly Adams.
He probably was, because.
Well, he always had the beard, didn't he?
Yeah, he always had the beard, but it was a trimmed down version of the.
And then it got very grey.
Yeah, but then he's let the locks grow out and all that. Yeah. But that's in there too, and he explains about, and he certainly says it's a man who leaves a lasting impression. So that's a good story from.
That's a good story, and we're going to move from that to sport, Declan, and to your area of expertise. The Donegal Sports Stars Awards were on.
Yeah, the 2020 Donegal Sports Star Award presentations were held on Monday night, John. That was 9 months after the winners were actually announced at the first ever virtual awards. So because of COVID, there wasn't an opportunity to make the presentations in person until now. So we had a small presentation, a long way away from the normal big function that we have at the end of January, John, when we were attracting up to 600 people. So I think there was about 40 people there on Monday evening for really an informal, but it was a formal presentation. But it was a lovely evening, and they all enjoyed it. We had 12 winners from 2020, and they were all there, which was great, including the overall winner.
How many years is this for it?
We're going in now to the 46th. This was the 45th actually.
45th,
yeah. Good, you just got to hold it though, like actual event.
It was, and like as I say, they were all, and as I say, the likes of Patsy McGowan from the Hall of Fame and Danny McGonigal from Appreciation, and a couple of locals here, Siobhan Coyle, who won the Brenton McDade Memorial Special Achievement Award for her work in refereeing and women's.
It takes me right back to the meetings before it ever started up at the Mulford Inn with Teddy Blaney and the late Brendan McDade and Paddy Sweeney and John McHugh. They're all gone.
Dennis Martin,
and the
pioneers of it.
Numbers of others.
As with only a few now, Father Michael Sweeney is one of the, and Seamus Durkin I think was there at the start. So like there's
the whole thing originated from the bingo committee at the inn at the time.
Yeah, is it?
Yeah, it did. Yeah, it wasn't a Donegal Sports Star Award thing as such. It grew and developed over the years, but that's where it all began.
More localised then, was it?
I happened to be part of the bingo committee. I was the official bingo caller for 3 or 4 years.
The first function was held in the Mulford Inn in November 1976.
1976. I'll tell you what, we're going to go back and move on to the front page, because we're doing the headline, Anger as Pharmacies Not Included in the Vaccine Booster. And this is an interview we did with a local pharmacist in Ramelton, Tom Murray, who says that the HSE decision not to include pharmacies in administering the booster vaccine for COVID-19 is a serious mistake. And he said there was no logical reason why the booster vaccine should not be available in more than 1,000 vaccinated pharmacies in towns and villages across the country. The HSE had said then that the pharmacies would continue to play an important role in the fight against COVID, but this does not include boosters. So Tom Murray is saying that this is full of contradictions, and he points to one, a very specific one, where the pharmacies are giving out boosters to the younger generation, people that are unvaccinated. But it was so happened at this time of the evening that they had a file, maybe of 5 or 6 vaccines open, and those 2 or 3 no shows. The pharmacist is then free to call somebody for a booster dose, but they can't advertise it, and they can't administer it. Otherwise, without official permission, and like that shows the contradictions that's going on in that.
Wastage.
But at that point, we're just going to leave it at that, just to mention that the Swally Anglers for the World Youth Championship have been chosen. And there's a story there in the Tribune with Charlie Devlin.
Yeah.
And Eamon, you have a function as well in relation to the screening of a film on St Michael's Church.
Yep, we covered that a few weeks ago in a feature in the paper, but basically the film, we're going to show it in Creasla Mass Nass Hall on Friday evening at 8 o'clock, and it's going to be shown again on the Workhouse in Dunfanny between 3 and 5 o'clock. It's going to run every bit of half hours, 20 minutes long, and hopefully we'll be able to run it successfully. I know we're mindful of COVID and all of that, but we'll keep the numbers limited, and we'll hopefully anybody who wants to show up and watch it, we'll show it to them.
And on that positive note, we'll bid adieu for this week. Talk to you again this time next week. Thank you.